Hello and welcome. As the Scottish Government's new Minister for Active Travel, I'm delighted to have been invited by the Way to Work project to introduce today's seminar on the climate emergency and transport. The world is finally waking up to the reality of what we've done and what we're still doing to our environmental life support system. Serious action is long overdue, so the Scottish Government is committed to achieving net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2045, and currently domestic transport accounts for the largest share of this. In 2019 it was more than a quarter of our country's emissions. So I'd like to set out for you some of the things the Scottish Government and our partners are doing collectively to support businesses like yours to make sure that sustainable travel is always the easiest choice. We're determined to reduce emissions from transport by reshaping our infrastructure in ways that promote health and well-being, social justice and our economy without doing more harm to the climate. We're significantly increasing Transport Scotland's budget for active travel to bring it up to £320 million by the end of this parliamentary session. That'll be 10% of the entire annual transport budget. In the context of the COP26 climate conference, and as workplaces like yours across the country are developing plans for reducing their emissions, we want to support the adoption of sustainable and active travel as one of the most effective ways that we can collectively achieve what needs to be done. Working together and through initiatives like Way to Work, we can drive that shift towards sustainable transport, reducing private car travel in favour of walking, wheeling, cycling, public and shared transport. So please enjoy today's speakers, and remember, this is only the start. We're here to support you to help make active and sustainable travel the natural choice for you and your staff. The Scottish Government wants to work with you all to make this change a reality across Scotland. Thanks very much.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on the climate emergency and transport and how workplaces can be part of the solution. My name is Terry Roberts, and I am the Interim Delivery Manager for Behaviour Change at Sustrans Scotland, who are one of the Way to Work partners, and I'll be your chair for today. It was great that the new Active Travel Minister, Patrick Harvie, was able to open the session this morning. As he says, the adoption of active and sustainable travel is at the heart of what needs to be done to reduce transport emissions and achieve Scottish Government's goal for being net zero by 2045. When we talk about sustainable travel today, we will be doing so with the sustainable travel hierarchy in mind. As you can see, this prioritises walking and wheeling, followed by cycling, public transport and shared transport ahead of single occupancy car use. While electric vehicles can be part of the solution to achieving net zero when used as a private vehicle, they should receive less emphasis in the future planning that moves higher up the hierarchy. Today we have a really packed agenda full of exciting and interesting speakers. From the climate change expert and travel expert, as well as hearing from some of the biggest workplaces in the country and what they are doing to embed sustainable travel within their businesses. Just before we start, some general housekeeping. Hopefully you will see in the chat function we've put a load of information that you can access. This includes information on how to get the live transcript on. If you do have any questions throughout the session, please just ping them into the Q&A box at the bottom and we will put them to the session at the end. You will also have the opportunity to vote for the questions that you want to be pressed and shown priority. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Magdalena from Keep Scotland Beautiful, who will kick off the session by introducing the climate emergency. Magdalena, over to you.
Thank you very much, Terry. I'm really happy to be part of this event, especially as you know, transport is the most critical of all topics when it comes to carbon reduction in Scotland, climate action ahead of COP26. I'm just going to try and share my screen. I think there is some kind of technical difficulty, so if Kate or Terry, you could share the screen for me, that would be great.
Hi, Magdalena, you should be able to share now, sorry.
That's fine, no worries. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm just going to start now, and thank you very much for introducing me. Before I start with my presentation, just would like to say a few about Keep Scotland Beautiful for those of you who haven't heard about us. We are an environmental charity in Scotland. We operate in Scotland, and our work focuses on three main strands. The first one is combating climate change, and here we include a lot of educational programs, including our climate emergency program training for individuals and organizations. Another strand that we are very traditionally known for is the one that is focusing on tackling litter and waste in Scotland. And then we also have a lot of place-based work, which focuses on protecting and improving the places that we care for here in Scotland. And everything we do is aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. If you'd like to learn more about our work, there is a lot of information on our website, and I'll provide a link to that at the end. Over the past few years, worldwide, we have been seeing more and more instances of extreme weather events. And these are events like heat waves, flooding, droughts, wildfires. And these extreme weather events have very serious social implications related to health, to food security, to damage in our infrastructure and buildings, but they're also posing significant risk on our natural environment as well. With climate change, with the warming temperatures, these type of events are going to become more frequent and more intense. And the only way for us to make sure that we avoid the most catastrophic impacts associated with climate change is to make sure we limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. And we've known about this problem for a very long time now. However, the science is clear. Whatever we've been trying to do so far to cut emissions and to address this problem hasn't been enough. We'll need to make much more bigger commitments, stronger action if we are to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. Climate change is no longer something that we need to deal with sometime in the future. Climate change has become a climate crisis and has put our planet under state of emergency. And each one of us have a role to play in addressing this emergency. What do we know so far about the problem? We know that our planet is already more than 1 degree Celsius warmer than it was during pre-industrial times. We also know that this warming is a result of greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere as a result of certain human activities, particularly the burning of fossil fuels, agriculture, deforestation, and other industries. We also know that the impacts of climate change won't be felt equally across the globe, and some will be hit worse than others. We know that climate change is reinforcing the vulnerability of certain communities and regions that are already experiencing some kind of distress related to conflicts, related to socio-economic challenges, as well as ineffective governance. We also know that the only way for us to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees and to avoid the most severe impacts of climate change is to take urgent and much stronger actions at all levels of society to cut global emissions. You don't need to be scientists to know how much our global average temperatures have been increasing over the past few centuries, but this minimalistic graph very well highlights the alarming rate at which temperatures have been increasing, especially over the last 30, 40 years. And what is Scotland doing in terms of addressing this global climate crisis? Scotland declared climate emergency in 2019 and later on committed to legally binding targets of reduction of all greenhouse gases to net zero by 2045 at the latest. And here is very important to highlight that it's at the latest. The sooner we get there, the better. And net zero doesn't mean doing a lot of things in 2045. It means doing a lot of things right now in order to get us to 2045, net zero 2045. So where are we today in terms of this target? The most recent data that we have is for 2019. And although we have achieved significant progress in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, there is still a lot to be done. In 2019, we're still emitting more greenhouse gases than our natural sinks can absorb. And although we have achieved very good progress, for example, with reducing emissions associated with energy by decarbonizing our energy supply, there is still so much ahead of us that it will be much more challenging, and especially when we talk about transport. And more than ever, we'll need a large systemic societal and behavior change to reduce those emissions. And transport, as we already heard, represents the largest part of Scotland's emissions, and road transport in particular, and cars contributing the most emissions. And the statistic that more than 50% of the journeys between only 1 and 2 kilometers, these are very short journeys, are made by car. This is so shocking, but at the same time provides a very good opportunity here, because if we are even only to focus on these short journeys as a first step, this will really help us cut transport emissions and will help us get closer to the net zero target. Where we would like to get to net zero by 2045. And what does this mean? It means that we want to get to a place where the amount of greenhouse gases that we emit into the atmosphere is no more than the amount that our carbon sinks can absorb. But net zero is not about continuing business as usual and then planting more trees to compensate for the damage that we're causing. Net zero is about reducing emissions as much as possible everywhere where that is possible. And only where that is not possible, then to think of offsetting by introducing carbon sinks in order to manage this balance, to achieve this balance. But of course, the most sustainable way to achieve net zero is to make sure that fossil fuels stay in the ground. And if we even look at the transport specifically in 2045, we see that transport being mostly decarbonized by that point, and only flying remains as a source of emissions. This is because flying will be very difficult to decarbonize, but all the rest of transport modes, introducing electric vehicles, but also people walking and cycling more and working from home more. So this will be the vision for 2045, and workplaces have a significant role to play to translate this vision into reality. And you can get so overwhelmed when you talk about climate action, but a good way to go about it is to focus on what you can do and what you can influence. And in terms of workplaces, identifying what are the impacts of your services and your activities in terms of transport emissions would be the first step. And then looking into what you can do to cut those emissions, what support you might need, what infrastructure, who can guide you on the way on your journey to reducing transport emissions, and who you can influence and lead by example so they can follow you and they can get inspired by you. And today we hear stories from organizations that already are on their way in cutting their transport emissions, as well as there is so much support on the Way to Work website for workplaces to help them get on board and start their journey to reducing transport emissions. And reducing transport emissions will benefit both your employees and your organization as a whole. It can bring you a lot of benefits in terms of improved physical and mental health of your people, as well as reducing costs. But it's very important as well for your reputation, because presenting yourself as an organization that is leading the way towards sustainability would certainly make you more competitive and much more attractive employer and stakeholder and partner as well. But before I go, just something for all of us to remember when we think about climate action and net zero, we really need to think about it holistically and understand that everything is interconnected. Therefore, by taking action on climate change, we're actually working towards something that has so many more benefits, and we might not even realize them. Climate action is not a sacrifice. Climate action has a lot of long-term benefits, and we really need to recognize those. And working towards net zero Scotland is going to bring a variety of benefits for our society. And these include new jobs and skills, healthier communities and environment, cleaner air, resilient people and infrastructure, as well as better connectivity and accessibility, affordability to transport, and will generally greatly improve the well-being of our people here in Scotland. If you would like to learn more about the climate emergency training that Keep Scotland Beautiful delivers and how this can help you respond to the climate emergency yourself, feel free to contact us on the email on the screen or look for us on our website. Thank you very much. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Magdalena. A really fascinating start to the webinar, and it really does show the urgency of the problem that we face and the real reasons that we need action now to achieve what we set out for in 2045. Next up, moving swiftly on, I'll try my best to keep it to time and keep the session flowing. So next up, I'm hoping, technical glitches aside, that Brendan Rooney is going to join us from Transport Scotland. Brendan, are you able to, are you on?
Yes, I think so, if I'm coming through.
I can hear you loud and clear. Great stuff.
Thanks very much. And apologies to everyone. I've had some technical issues a bit late in the day. So it's a bit of a rudimentary setup. So I am here on the phone. And we've got a slide pack. I think perhaps, Kate, you could help me talk through. But yes, I'm Brendan Rooney. I'm working the climate change unit within Transport Scotland. So here to give you a bit of a run through this morning of government action around reducing car use and disincentivising car use, certainly. Great to see business and industry coming together like this and discussing these things. So yes, I was just going to run you through that. So hopefully people can see a slide pack. If we can move on to the second one there, Kate, would be wonderful. People may be aware, the government set a commitment to reduce national car kilometres by 20% by 2030 as part of our trajectory towards transport's contribution to the net zero pathway. So we've just recently published research on this, actually, that the Minister updated Parliament on very recently, showing how that fits into a potential scenario towards 2030 and then on to 2045. It's obviously a hugely sort of challenging endeavour. There are a huge number of countries in the world that have set a kind of demand reduction like that. As Magdalena was going through there are a high preponderance of short journeys in Scotland, and in fact in most societies. That kind of deeply ingrained reliance on the car is something that has evolved over time. Over decades, really, and the level of convenience and the thought that it is the first port of call for many journeys mean that it's quite a shift in behaviour and quite a shift in attitudes. As the slide sets out there, cars are about 40% of transport emissions in Scotland, and transport's the largest emitting sector. So it is an area that really can't, I think Scottish ministers feel, can't go unaddressed and needs looking at. So I've got there a little sort of trio of issues. That shift towards active travel and shift towards public transport, and how do we, disincentivising car use, perhaps the wrong phrase, but how does society move away or sort of wean off the potential over-reliance on it? So if we can move to the next slide, the 20% figure was based on kind of a range of academic forecasts around this. There are different windows of achievability and what would be needed for the kind of reductions being looked at in Scotland, but essentially it falls within that window. And the UK Committee on Climate Change has made quite a lot of assertions for Scotland and the UK in general about the need to reduce reliance on car and the need for sort of demand management or demand measures around it. So that's where we are. The next slide. There's been quite a lot of questions. Well, why don't we just, as a society, transition into electric vehicles? Would that not be the solution? Just like cleaner energy, but without the real behaviour change. There's a range of A range of issues, I suppose, with that. There's the point about congestion and the effects that has on the economy and the effects it has on the attractiveness of using active travel or public transport if those aren't prioritised. There's also actually the carbon footprint of producing electric vehicles and what happens to them after their shelf life and how they could be reused. And just, I suppose, that sense of space and civic space and society is dominated by, large pieces of metal that could be more open to dual functions or multi-functions for recreational space, children play, all of these kind of issues. So the next slide, I think Magdalena touched on this, or Terry did at the start. Scotland's sustainable travel hierarchy has been out in a government strategy for a wee while, and obviously it has private cars least prioritised, and as we move up, shared transport, multi-occupancy onto public transport and larger, and cycling, walking, and indeed wheeling, something that would be prioritised, particularly for short journeys. That high preponderance of short journeys is something that comes up again and again, and I think often when you look at some of the attitudinal data that comes through as well, people are under an impression that it would be the most convenient way of getting about for those, but actually there might be quicker and much more enjoyable ways to achieve some of those. The next point on the next slide, I have to go through them like this. COVID-19 is obviously still having quite fundamental ramifications for society at large, but particularly for transport, public transport, and the messaging of not going into enclosed public spaces because of transmission, and what that's meant for particularly rail and bus is still there. And I suppose there are questions about what legacy will that leave, how will people, as we move away from the pandemic, feel about them, how will that have manifested itself in the choices they make. Car journeys took a huge dip at the start of the pandemic as the daily commute and the drive to school, etc., dried up. But we've now moved back, despite, I suppose, quite a high number of professions still working from home for particularly office-based jobs or having some kind of blended model. But car use in Scotland is pretty much up at pre-pandemic level. So there's kind of a lot of data coming through about why people say they're making those journeys, and things like recreation and being stuck in the house so much in people's working lives is obviously impacting on that. And I suppose there's the knock-on effect of the rise of online shopping and e-commerce, which I'm sure a lot of the people here will probably know more about than myself, but that transition to that was happening pre-COVID, but it seems to have given a bit of a turbocharger to it, and seeing quite a lot of that, and how long will that legacy last and manifest itself. And I suppose those aren't car journeys, and we've had a lot of questions as to why is the government looking at car journeys specifically? What about vans? What about hybrid van car vehicles? And I think it just goes back to that statistical data about the percentage for cars. So the next slide, and the potential for that seismic shift we've seen over COVID and the boost that it's given to the remote home working. There's quite a lot of thinking going on in governments. I think Wales has set a target for home working that it's looking to achieve. Whether or not that is sole home working or a kind of remote hub kind of model that might have an impact here. But I suppose that it's quite undeniable that there has been a very quick shift towards that at the start of the pandemic, and different businesses and different needs, I think, have pathways either back to what was before or other models, and looking at how that impacts on transport demand, how that impacts on the daily commute. But we've also got the point, I suppose, of health and well-being and emerging research around how people are feeling in terms of social isolation and those wider outcomes that impact on that as well. So the next slide's just around the Climate Assembly. There's also a Just Transition Commission in Scotland that some of you may be familiar with, that have made quite a lot of assertions in this space around how those bodies feel we should be taking the move towards net zero, and looking at that promotion of active travel, promotion of public transport, but also how do we and how do we level up the cost of car? There's a lot of discussion about, you know, car use fuel duty hasn't altered for a number of years, and transport fares are often going up. So how does that influence people's choices, and what can be done about that? I mean, just on that point as well, I think fuel duty is one of the issues for all devolved administrations that is quite difficult to factor in. There's a lot of forecasts around electric vehicles coming on stream, how attractive they will be in the near future and hit parity with fossil fuel propulsion vehicles, and that tipping point towards them, which I suppose forecasting self-evidently says that would mean there'll be quite large reductions for the Treasury's take on fuel duty. But there hasn't been a great deal of shared thinking or transparency about where that might go and evolve in years, and how motoring might be taxed if propulsion and energy changes a lot. For Scotland, that's something that we're very keen to have a bit of foresight on, because it helps us plan towards 2030 rather than being in the dark. The next slide, sorry, is just on that equalities and that qualities angle. I mean, one of the reasons we've included electric vehicles as well in the target is that at the moment, certainly, they are quite expensive. They are quite, I wouldn't say prohibitively expensive, but they're not achievable for everybody. So looking at government action to sort of target only those vehicles that not only they are higher emitting, but they can be the only option for some. So not just for reasons of emissions, but also reasons of justness and fairness. That was included at the outset. There are more slides I've got here on policy intervention. I'm aware I'm probably running to over time. I'm not sure if I should go into those, if Terry or Kate want to give me a steer.
You can have another couple of minutes, Brendan, but yeah, we're getting close to time.
Okay, will do. So just moving to slides number 11, we've got a range of proposals. Mr. Harvie talked about it at the beginning, about the amount of budget going on active travel, grant schemes, road space reallocation to try and ensure that there's attractive places to cycle and wheel and walk. Speed limits coming down to mean cars are less dominant in that kind of space, and just some of the active travel promotion. The next one, encouraging public and shared transports. We've got an extension for under 22s in Scotland to the concessionary bus upcoming, and we've launched a fair fares review, which is to look at this issue that we were discussing a bit about the cost parity between car use and public transport fares, and what can be done in that space. Mobility as a service to try and make journeys more user friendly, and people to be able to book multimodal journeys that connect up, and car sharing, which I think for businesses and looking at how business travel works and how the commute to and from work works does hold a lot of potential, particularly for some of those longer journeys, and particularly for some of those more remote areas that are more car reliant, and there are less options for the traveller to use public and active transport. Then cantering through, next slide on measures we're introducing around bus and the infrastructure, and looking at how infrastructure works and looking at how it can promote public travel and active travel. There's obviously kind of retrospective input like bus lanes and active travel, or cycle lanes or cycle paths, and how those can be repurposed. But the Strategic Transport Project Review, which is a kind of national review and measures coming out later this year on infrastructure, and that will prioritise infrastructure spend over the next 20 years with quite a high significance on the environmental impacts and what it means for travel demand. So that will be looked at again. moving on to the next slide, and I'll maybe leave it there. There are options, obviously, for councils at the minute that probably many of you are aware of around parking, around low emission zones, around speed limits that they're bringing in. Looking at publishing a route map later this year, I think ministers are going to have some serious thinking about what is the disincentive in car use, but how does that fit in a package of measures that that does make public and active transport more user-friendly and more of a viable choice for a lot of people. But I think some of these are the things that are being investigated and kind of looked at ahead of that. And some of the fairly stark trajectories around the climate emergency and what would be needed in the kind of behaviour change, I think it is fair to say that there would need to be sticks as well as carrots around some of this, but the kind of whole system approach and how does planning, how does localism, how does actually ensuring people are able to access services, goods, the workplace, opportunities, education that is either not too far from where they're home, that reduces that need to travel, and obviously the kind of ramping up of digital platforms is something that may also pay dividends there. So I'm aware I'm over time. I think I'll just leave it there, but to say thank you very much for listening, and look forward to questions on the panel on it.
Very much, so much information there to digest. We will try and make slides available afterwards if anyone wants to dip back into them. And as I said, just a quick reminder that any questions that you want to bring to the panel later, please do so. Pop them in the question and answer as we go along, and we will try and put them forward. Really excited now to invite two workplaces who are leading the way in terms of promoting active and sustainable travel at their workplaces. First up, I'd like to invite Sarah, who is the Travel to Next Facilities Coordinator, and she will be talking about embedding active travel into the commute. Sarah, over to you.
Hello everyone, my name's Sarah McAlinden. I work for Next Head Office. I've been here for 15 years now. My primary role is to encourage and engage with staff to travel in a more sustainable method of travel. If you can have the next slide, please. This slide shows the breakdown of the company at the minute. We've got just under 41,500 staff throughout the UK and Ireland, of which 4,600 of them are based in Scotland. Some of them, one of them are in the distribution centres. As you can see from this slide, we do know that 43% of our staff already travel sustainably throughout the business. Next slide, please. What we're doing next is monthly competitions. This will be sustainable and active based competitions, so walk to work, cycle to work. In the winter months, we do travel by bus and car sharing. We also do travel surveys. We've got two surveys. So we've got a live survey that's open 24/7. And that's where we encourage all staff to register how they travel and to update it as and when they change the travel. Every year we do an annual travel survey as well, which is a little bit more in depth. And that runs in October. We're just preparing this year's one now. The annual survey we incentivise with a £200 gift voucher. We compile travel plans for our sites. Originally, we used to just do it for head office. In the last year, we've done 155 of our sites. Some of those are in Scotland. In the next 3 months, we're looking to do another 200 sites, with the remaining stores being done by March next year. We make sure that our Travel to Next website is up to date all the time with current bus links, current information that's going on around the UK. We've got dedicated staff that deliver the sustainable travel message. So that's myself, a lady called Caitlin Pico, and a gentleman called Stephen Bentham. I also sit as an expert advisor for ModeShift. I don't know if some of you have heard that, but that is a great site for logging on all your travel plans. Next, attend a lot of national and global events to promote the work that we do here. We do run travel clinics and Dr. Bikes sessions and event days. During COVID, this has all been done by Google Meets. We do in-person events as well, which we're hoping to get back to soon. We collect all staff postcodes, so we're able to plot where they live in relation to their workplace so that we can best help them travel to work. At some of our larger sites, including head office, we offer a free coach service. And our most recent scheme is ambassadors. So we sent out a plea to the business to ask staff to volunteer to be an ambassador to promote active and sustainable travel. We launched this about 6 weeks ago, and we've got 35 staff signed up so far. Next slide, please. Post-COVID, we are looking to keep hybrid working in place at the offices. Now, traditionally, Next was very much you work in the office and not at home. Hybrid has been working quite well, so we're hoping to keep that in place. We've been able to review the buses at the head office and distribution sites, especially with head office, because more people are working from home. We're not needing as many buses, so we've reduced from 10 buses to 1 bus. We're looking into barrel bikes at the moment. This is still very much into talks, but we're hoping to get some deals where staff can use barrel bikes throughout the UK. We work with the LAs, the local authorities all the time. You know, whatever local authorities got going on, we will promote for them. So if they've got a walking competition or a doctor bike session, we'll promote that to them for staff in that area. We hold clean air day events at our bigger sites. We plan to run more active and sustainable competitions over car share and bus competitions going forwards. We plan to work with our ambassadors to drive the walking and cycling message. We have now launched, we've just launched the first one, and the second one's due in December, an active travel newsletter that goes out to all 41,000 staff. We have car-free day pledges and clean air day pledges where staff can pledge not to drive on our website. And we're just in the middle of producing a calendar which is going to be filled with active travel dates rather than all your usual bank holidays. This is going on sale next month to all staff throughout the business. Next slide, please. Our tips for carrying out a travel plan. So for anyone just getting started, first thing you need to do is speak to your staff and find out how they are currently travelling to work. You need to do a site survey, so look at where your site is, look at your bus infrastructure, your driving infrastructure, your walking infrastructure, look at the home postcodes. Do people live very close where they're currently driving? Run events like doctor bikes or travel clinics. Contact the sustainability teams at your local authority. They are there to help you. Run some competitions. These don't have to be incentivized. You know, a free cup of coffee will get people joining in. Appoint a sustainable travel champion. This doesn't have to be in a whole new role. It could be an existing role that somebody just picks up some emails or support. Notice boards, and if you can, a website. Next slide, please. For the LAs, what I would recommend is that the LA have a toolbox kit ready to give to businesses. And in the toolbox, it should be a leaflet of everything that the LA can offer to help the business promote sustainable and active travel. For example, do they do doctor bikes? Do they do walking maps? Do they do grant funding? There should also be a diary of events plan, because that will help the business support the local authority to deliver the sustainable travel message. Local authorities should also share their travel plan. It's a little bit unfair where local authorities are asking businesses to produce a travel plan when they don't produce one themselves. And direct phone numbers, there's nothing worse than trying to get in hold of somebody at the council and going through switchboards. Next slide, please. It's also good to hook up with external organisations, people like Living Streets, Sushtrans, Love to Ride, Lift Share, public bus providers. They all have their own little offers and incentives that will help you engage with your staff. Next slide, please. Motor Stars, I mentioned this earlier on. This is where we load all our travel plans. At the minute, we've just had our latest round accredited, and as you can see, we've got 7 gold, 2 silver, 67 bronze, and 66 green. We will be submitting another 200 sites between now and Christmas. Next slide, please. And that's my contact information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Lots going on, and thanks for coming along and sharing that with us. I I think next up we'll just move swiftly on, and then we'll go into the panel for any questions that anyone may have towards the end. So next up to speak will be Lisa Deakin, and she is the COP26 store manager for IKEA. She will be sharing some of the great stuff that is going on in IKEA ahead of COP26 in Glasgow in the coming month.
Hi everyone. Can you see me? Hear me?
I can see
All
you.
good. So I'm Lisa, and I'm the COP26 store leader for IKEA Glasgow. And at IKEA, we really want our stores and deliveries and touch points to be accessible to the many people, but at the same time, we also want to reduce our climate impact of our products and also our goods and people transport at the same time as well. And we're really early in our active travel journey in comparison to like Nick's, for example, but we all need to start somewhere. So today I'll just share with you some info about our IKEA story so far, and hope this will inspire some of you to take action and make some changes within your businesses and maybe even in your personal lives as well. Next slide, please. So some of you might be asking, why should we promote active travel and how do we go about it? So firstly, cars and trucks produce the most greenhouse gases of any type of transport globally. So promoting is extremely important to reduce emissions and combat climate change. And there's also many personal benefits that you can get from choosing more active travel options. For example, if you choose to walk or cycle, you're exercising, getting healthier and saving money at the same time, which is always good. And choosing an active or sustainable travel option can reduce your finances, your stress levels, help you sleep better and increase your well-being in general overall. And there's also many ways you can promote sustainable travel in your business and also take action to have more options available to your co-workers. And they don't all have to be major changes either. And at IKEA, we feel really connected to this Swedish phrase lagom, which means just the right amount. And I think that's a really powerful phrase as regarding active and sustainable travel. Yeah, there's some bigger changes you can make. And if you've got the resources to do that, then that's amazing, go ahead. But smaller businesses might not have those resources. So at IKEA, we truly believe that small changes can make a big impact. So if you just do what you can do and make simple changes that fit into your everyday, that's a great start as well. And one of the first steps we took in IKEA Glasgow was just taking some time to understand the local infrastructure, our travel patterns and preferences of our co-workers and customers. And we've done that just through doing some surveys and collecting some data. Next slide, please. So those surveys, the information we got from them really allowed us to identify the impact and any barriers that our co-workers and customers were facing and getting to the store, and any problems with business travel as well. And once you've got that information, you can really start to find some solutions. From the co-workers, one main response that we got is on a Sunday, there's no bus that passes our IKEA Glasgow store before 9:30. So the guys that want to start at 8 or even night shift guys can't get here, so they will drive in. And as you can imagine, it's quite hard to influence the bus companies to start earlier on a Sunday. But in doing that, we thought, what else can we do to help our co-workers get here? So we started working with Kinto UK, and we've set up a carpooling solution that will come in after COVID restrictions are eased. And Kinto's a great company. It's really revolutionising how co-workers can travel to work and connecting co-workers who are willing to commute together and want to help out their fellow co-workers at the same time. And it's a really great option for us. We've got 450 staff in the building. So from the surveys, we know that lots of people are coming from the same kind of similar areas around Glasgow, and they could easily share. So this will build better relationships with the co-workers. Maybe you're sharing someone that you don't usually speak to. So building those relationships across different departments, helping our co-workers save money and also reducing our CO2 footprint at the same time as well. So it's a win-win for everyone. And we've also got a new meet and travel policy, which came in place in May 2020. So this was created in response to the pandemic and encourages co-workers maybe to have online meetings instead or find alternative travel if possible. And we've seen a great reduction in travel even with the restrictions easing, which is great. Next slide, please. Another step we took to create a working environment that promotes active travel was promoting these options internally to staff. And that encourages them and enables them to know what their options are and choose those options. So a great way to do this is communicating any options as clearly as possible. So in our Glasgow store, we communicate to the co-workers in our corridors. So that's a few examples there. They've got little QR codes, information, and we kind of took inspiration from the Glasgow subway route, the little circle there. And we've got sustainable travel options on each stop. QR codes with bus times, easily available for anyone passing by. We also send out a weekly newsletter, emails, we do events, and we've got co-worker ambassadors in the store who are available for any questions and can provide information to any other co-workers who need it. And we also talk at our morning meetings every day as well. And I think using various channels, digitally and physically, can make sure you reach the many people in your business and get as many co-workers on board as possible. Next slide, please. However, we're not experts in active travel, so it's a great idea to reach out for help and partner with other businesses that know more. And at the start of the financial year, we partnered with Sustrans, and we're at our start of our journey with them. And through Sustrans, we gain insight, support, guidance on how to educate co-workers and influence them to make more sustainable travel choices. In our first year, it's really been about empowering our co-workers so they feel more confident, they know their options, and they feel more aware and can make those more conscious choices. Some actions we've taken so far is we've implemented a new secure bike storage structure outside the store that you can see in the photo there. And we had 45 registered users in the first 2 months, which is an amazing uptake considering we're in beautiful but also rainy and cold Glasgow. And the storage has also been fitted with some equipment that co-workers can fix, maybe burst tires, anything wrong with their bike. And I think having that there really motivates co-workers to cycle because they know if anything happened to them on their journey here, they've got the equipment they need to fix it so they can get home in time. We also recruited 3 amazing travel champions in store. These co-workers had an interest and knowledge about sustainable travel already, so put themselves forward. So they're the kind of talking partners in the store. They can answer any questions other co-workers have, and they meet regularly to come up with some new ideas and things we can do to promote in the store. And they'll also really be helping during COP26. We're going to have some co-worker workshops and events in the store, and those co-workers will be there to push and raise awareness about active travel. And finally, we've also got a Cycle to Work IKEA Glasgow Strava app, and it's got 14 members just now. And I think apps like this are a really great way because it kind of creates this competition between co-workers and staff and motivates more people to take part as well. Next slide, please. So we've got a little co-worker testimonial here. I think being part of schemes like Cycle to Work and partnering with other organisations like Sustrans can make a difference because it allows co-workers to feel they're supported and enable them to take that responsibility, be more sustainable in their everyday job, because that help and advice is there if they need it. And Robert's a perfect example of someone who's taken the Cycle to Work scheme in his stride, and he's seen loads of positive benefits so far. So he's worked here for nearly 20 years and used to travel by bus and the occasional taxi if it's early morning shifts. But he made the sustainable decision to take an interest-free co-worker loan and purchased a bike. And now he's cycling to work every day, and Robert said that he's able to spend 2 hours extra a day at home with his family. He's getting fitter and he's helping save the planet at the same time. And he's really happy with the new bike shed that we've got outside because we did have a few incidents a few years ago where bikes were stolen. So having that has increased confidence in the co-workers to be able to cycle knowing their bikes are secure and safe outside the building. Last slide, please. Thank you. And obviously, as such a large company, we do many deliveries every day. And this is a bigger action that you could look into. And we've decided that we wanted to partner with a sustainable delivery partner who takes sustainability seriously. And I think having this sustainable mobility offer increases trust in your brand and also positive branding as well. and it contributes to improved air quality, reducing emissions and noise reduction in the cities that we operate in. And that's why we've chosen to work with ARCT. So ARCT take being green to heart, and being sustainable is one of their priorities, which is one of the reasons we're proud to be partners with them. Our values are really well matched, and they try to give back to society in a number of ways, which IKEA tries to do as well. So in regards to deliveries, they've installed charging stations and got lots of more EV vehicles available. And having that really allows low emission transport and deliveries and services as well. ARCT have a staff training app, which they've introduced last year, and that trains co-workers how to drive in a more eco-friendly way. And they've also got targets on how they want to reduce CO2 by improved driving styles as well, which is really, really great. And they've also trialled all the EV vehicles on the market and chose which ones were best suited. And they were the first customer in Scotland for some of these. And they're currently installing 1 DC charger and 7 AC chargers at their hub in the east end of Glasgow. And at IKEA, to kind of future-proof battery life, we are also installing 6 EV chargers at the store, so just specifically for delivery vans as well. And also ARCT, it's not just about driving there, they really want to reduce their environmental impact through other methods. For example, they plant trees to offset any diesel miles that they're driving, and they also have 100,000 bees at their hub, and their own beekeeper Kathy as well, who looks after them. And I think that's just really wholesome. It shows that they are taking it seriously, and they have these hives at their hub, and that fosters biodiversity and the ecosystem as well. And they show school kids, and it's a learning opportunity for staff. So they're definitely a great partner for IKEA. And if you can find someone similar, then it's great to find someone that matches those values and takes sustainability as seriously as you. And yeah, so that's our IKEA story so far. And I hope it demonstrated that there are small changes you can make, but also big changes as well. And hopefully inspired some of you to start on your journey. And that's me. Thank you.
Amazing, Lisa. Thank you very much. And thank you also to Sarah. It really is great to see these examples, and for such big workplaces to be taking active and sustainable travel really seriously, and having real clear plans of what they're going to do and how to engage staff. Moving on, we at Way to Work have developed 5 key action points that we think can help to support workplaces to engage in active and sustainable travel. We are not saying this is a complete list, but we hopefully know that this might be a place for some people to start or some people to develop where they're at. So, and we're very much aware that people are coming from different parts at different stages of implementing this within their business practice. So whatever stage you're at, hopefully there will be a little something here for you. So the first point from taking action in your workplace is to identify the impact. And we saw there both in Next and IKEA's presentation that getting to know their business, their employees, where they travel, and getting that key data can really help to get a handle on what kind of carbon emissions are coming about from your commuting and business travel. So in this, we are kind of talking about creating surveys, auditing sites, getting to know your infrastructure in and around you, and getting to know your staff. The second point is to create policies, so to really embed this within the organisation, and really to prioritise active and sustainable travel, and then put it at the heart of everything they do. These can come in the form of tying it into existing policies or creating specific policies for this. Third point is to create working environments that promote active and sustainable travel. So we heard there about lots of things that are going on in the organisation, and there's a whole host you think you can do, from putting information available to staff, creating facilities, infrastructure on your sites that help to promote active and sustainable travel. Also just creating events, hosting things, having websites, and really fostering a culture that exists there for active and sustainable travel. The advocate internally is really just creating an awareness in your organisation that it is an acceptable mode of travel and that we can really get behind. By doing this, you are really reaching out to people, getting to know them, and actually catering for the needs that people have, rather than just laying on support in a generic kind of way. So get to know your organisation. And then the last point that we would like to lean on, or like to propose as a way to promote active and sustainable travel at your workplace, would be to advocate externally. So this really is getting to know your local area. We heard there from IKEA partnering with local organisation and really bringing things together. So that might be engaging with local infrastructure improvement in the area, feeding into the development of such projects, such as how your staff could benefit, how they use it, feeding into consultations, things like that, get in touch with local councillors, but yet also reaching out to organisations that already exist. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So you can lean on whether it be Way to Work and the active travel delivery partners, or whether it be for local more community for more relevant stuff to your workplace. That is very much a tool that can help you, and you will find lots more information on this on Way to Work, and lots of support that both Sarah and Lisa have mentioned. To give you a little bit more information on Way to Work and what this looks like, I will now pass you over to Kate, who will give you a very brief introduction to Way to Work. Kate, over to you.
Hi everyone, thanks Terry. Yeah, my name's Kate and I'm the project officer for Way to Work based within Sustrans. I'm also the host of this webinar right now, and I can see so many people have joined, which is great. So thank you so much for coming along. Apologies for my voice, I'm just full of the cold today. So before I kind of continue on from the 5 actions that Terry's just introduced, yeah, as he said, I want to give a very, very brief whistle stop tour or introduction to Way to Work to provide you a bit of context. So Way to Work is a partnership of 15 different organisations across Scotland, including our funder, Transport Scotland. And together we bring you the Way to Work website, which is a one-stop shop for active and sustainable travel information for workplaces in Scotland. On the website, you can find so much information on funding, training, support, awards, challenges, travel planning, and a plethora of useful resources. We also bring you events just like this one. So our vision for Way to Work is to really try and make it an essential tool for workplace support and action surrounding active and sustainable travel. Terry mentioned those 5 actions there that we are suggesting you can take in your workplace to support active and sustainable travel. And we've heard from Sarah and Next and Lisa at IKEA so brilliantly about how they have taken similar actions and the real wide-spanning benefits that this can bring, as Magdalena mentioned at the beginning of the session as well, and the fact that it can bring so many benefits, not just to the workplace, but also to the planet around us. So our kind of call to action, as it were, for you today is to take this all like one step further, and we would like you to pledge to take action. I'm just going to quickly show you the Way to Work website and show you how you can actually do this. Oh, let's go back again. So hopefully you can still see my screen here, which shows the website. Please let me know if that's not working. So this is the Way to Work website. We've created a brand new section all on the climate emergency, where if you click here, you can find and kind of recap a lot actually of what's been discussed today, and also find out more on what we've covered in the webinar. You'll see all of the topics listed here that there's information on. Once you've kind of had a look at these, if we want to go into this section here that says over to you, taking action in your workplace, we've listed those 5 suggested actions here with little prompt questions as well. To help you with this, there's also a list of further resources as well. where you can find a lot of inspiration, and you can do so by clicking here. It's also in the list on the previous page, which we'll continue to update this list as well as we go along. So as I said, we would like you to make a pledge, and you would head here on the Way to Work website to do so. So you may wish to pledge to take one of these 5 actions that we've set out to you, but as Terry said, it's not the be all and end all, and you may wish to do something different. So yeah, it's up to you. You can come up with something different as well. So what we would like you to do is, if you click here to make your pledge, all you need to do is simply fill in this quick form. Let us know who you are as well. That's very important. And of course, we would like you to share your pledge with us and with the world. So there is a link there when you're in this form to download graphics, different graphics for different social media channels. And yeah, we would love to see you posting your pledges online and encouraging other workplaces to do the same as well. This is a great way to shout about potentially what you may already be doing to support active and sustainable travel in your workplace, or alternatively to really try and get you thinking, what more could we be doing? Maybe you were inspired by some of the presentations today, and hopefully these 5 suggested actions can give you a bit of food for thought as well. So yes, I'm gonna go back to my slides. That's the pledge, and that is the graphic there that you would download. So we really hope to see you posting these pledges online. That would be brilliant. Please do also keep up with Way to Work by following us on Twitter and on LinkedIn. Join the professional community, as it were. You can also stay up to date very easily by signing up to our mailing list. I promise I won't bombard you with emails, just to update you when we have, for example, future events just like this one you've attended today. So you can sign up to our mailing list literally right now if you wish, by scanning that QR code on your phone. I'll leave it up for a few seconds. But yes, thank you so much. That was a very quick introduction to Way to Work, and to our call to action for you today. I really hope that you join us in pledging your support for active and sustainable travel. I will pass the baton back to Terry.
Thank you very much, Kate, and thank you very much for giving it a good go. I know you're fighting a cold today, so it's a great effort on your behalf. And I would seriously recommend Way to Work as the place to go for any information on active or sustainable travel. As well as what Kate mentioned, there is also loads of information such as funding, such as challenges you can take part of, such as events that are going on, and lots of information on all the partners that all have special expertise that they can give out to workplaces. And I love the comment that Lisa made about small change can have big impacts. So if you do want to make a pledge, you don't need to make a grand gesture. It could be the start of your journey, it could be how you're moving along, or it could already be something that you're already doing and we'd like to shout about, and we'd love to hear from you. Right, that brings us to the final part of the webinar, which is the panel section. So I'd love to invite everyone back who has spoken. So Magdalena, Sarah and Brendan, and also pleased to invite Catherine Brough, who is the Head of Behaviour Change at Cycling Scotland, to give more practical information of what support is out there, if anyone has any questions along there. And I would pass you on to Shona Drummond, who is from Travel Know-How Scotland and is also one of the Way to Work partners. So Shona, over to you to facilitate.
Hi there, thanks very much, Terry. Yeah, welcome again to our panellists today, who Terry's introduced there, and to Kath from Cycling Scotland joining us. We have a number of questions that have come through, so thank you for that. I'm going to do my best to bat those back to our panellists, and we'll try to get through as many of those as possible in the 20 minutes that we've got. If we don't cover all of them, we will endeavour to get responses back and we'll circulate those to everybody that's attended today. So I'm going to start off with a question for Sarah next. There's a question coming on the chat around to what extent the actions that you take to influence staff, do you usually find that those staff that are responding are those that are traditionally more likely to choose more active or sustainable methods, or do you find the reach is kind of broad? You talked about having 43% of your staff traveling sustainably, so that's a huge proportion. You know, how do you find that? Does your data show that people have a propensity to more sustainable travel, or do you think that it's across the board? You have seen people shifting? Hi, Sarah, can you hear me?
Shona, my microphone's gone off.
We can hear you, Sarah.
That's all right. The screen's gone off and I can't get the screen where my microphone was. We do find that we get a mixture of both. So we get the ones that already walk and cycle. They obviously always enter the competitions. But we do get people that would normally drive to work. And one example I can give you is a chap called Colin. He used to drive to work all the time. We did a free electric bike scheme where people could borrow an electric bike for 4 weeks. He borrowed one of the electric bikes, and at the end of that, he bought an electric bike. Now he cycles in every day, 26 miles each way.
Fantastic.
So we do engage with, you know, we do make some changes with people that were driving who are now not driving, people that, you know, don't drive for maybe 6 months of the year because they're taking part in the competitions. And then people that, you know, would always take part in the competitions anyway because they always walked or they always cycled.
Would you say that there's particular tools that are most successful within the work that you're doing around promoting active and sustainable travel? Is there certain measures above others that work particularly well within your organisation?
I think it's our email and social media platforms, to be honest with you. They're the two ways that we communicate with staff. So emails will be to all of our office-based staff and our online centres. And then we use a social media platform called Yapster to communicate with our distribution centres and all of our stores. Since the pandemic, we've really hyped up how we contact our distribution and store staff. And we've had a lot more engagement with those staff as a result. To give a bit of an example, pre-pandemic, we might get, I don't know, 150, 200 people enter the competitions. Since the pandemic and the engagement that we've done with the stores and the distribution, we're getting between 600 and 800 people a month entering the competitions.
Great, that's great. Thank you, Sarah. Moving on to some of the other questions, bear with me while I come through on the chat here. We had a question around public transport for Brendan. Brendan, are you on the line? I'm not sure that Brendan can hear us. I'm going to come back to Brendan. Hopefully we can come back to him. We also have a couple of questions around cycling, and Kath, I'm going to direct these ones at you around kind of how organisations and workplaces can put certain measures in to support more active and sustainable travel, and specifically thinking about cycling. Are there particular things that organisations can do to address things like cycle safety, for example? And also there's the substantial, Ewan mentioned in one of the questions that he's put in the Q&A that, you know, there's quite a substantial change required in workplaces to be able to support more active and sustainable travel. Is there some advice you can give and guidance, Kath, you can give to workplaces as to the kind of steps that they can take to encourage cycling?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity to join today. I would say like the overall priorities are that we all ensure that there are safe routes and that there are fit for purpose facilities at the workplace if somebody is wanting to cycle to work, so they've got somewhere that they can securely park their bike for the duration of their working day, or if they're doing intersite visit from one workplace to another, temporary visitor secure parking as well. I think with regards to the safe routes, is an awful lot of activity going on at the moment. There's a lot of building. You'll notice the installation of new infrastructure for separate cycleways across Scotland, and a lot of plans have been outlined for strategic improvement for these. This work will take time. So in the interim, the pop-ups that we saw, Space for People, during COVID, they provided that extra room for people to cycle, reallocating road space from the car, not to the detriment of the pedestrian or those in wheelchairs or using buggies. And I think workplaces probably do have a role. Like, it was great hearing from Sarah, like, on the amount of progress they've made with travel plans, because travel plans are the key for getting that information and communicating those quieter routes, not along the busy A roads, etc., to different workplaces. So I would say that any sort of travel plan facility, whether it be online mode shift or personal travel plan tools that can be emailed to staff, going to get an awful lot of headway with those. And it also allows you a way to track who's opening the travel plans, who's reading them, and then you can follow up on that to see if you're getting that shift. But I think, you know, I worked an awful lot pre-COVID on face-to-face engagement, and that all engaging people who drive to work, to change to active travel was always really good face-to-face, because an awful lot of people who commute by car, they don't enjoy their commute. They would rather find an alternative. They don't want to be in traffic jams or in congestion. A lot of them certainly can't afford the running costs. So there's a huge opportunity to re-engage with staff. And I would say that there's an awful lot of big workplaces that have probably made a lot of savings by not having that business mileage being paid out over the last 18 months for middle managers, execs, people traveling from one place to another for meetings or business purposes. So, you know, there might be savings or things there that can be ring-fenced to look at how you reallocate your parking management, and consider how you further promote and incentivize active travel.
That's great. Thanks, Kath. That's really, really interesting. Thank you very much. Brendan, can you hear me? No, I'm gonna come back again. You can. Great, Brendan. No. Hi there.
Hi, I think it's maybe you can't hear me, but yes, I can hear you now.
We have a few questions that have come in that I'm wondering if I can put your way to look at. There's a number of them come up in different areas. I'm going to start with one around that came in from Joe around public transport usage, and I appreciate that a bigger issue, but you touched on in your slides earlier that a fair fares review had been commissioned by the Scottish Government. And I just wondered, Joe's made the point that, you know, are you aware that public transport, train, is more expensive during peak hours? And what do you think should be done to motivate people to use trains in the morning? Now, as I say, you did mention the fares review, and you've talked about the kind of just transition. Can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of, you know, how do we encourage and incentivize people back onto public transport, taking into account the kind of the cost of it at the moment?
Yes, I can certainly do my best, and I'm a bit of a generalist in Transport Scotland, so I'm not actually kind of, you know, embedded in the rail unit. But I mean, affordability obviously is an issue, and is a, you know, predominant factor when anyone's deciding what mode of travel they would take. I think it's fairly sort of evident, as we've talked about fuel duty, and there have been rising rail costs in the past. Bus, I mean, a lot of the Scottish Government have obviously said there'll be a public sector bidder for future rail provision in Scotland, and I suppose it remains to be seen what can be done around that. I mean, attractiveness is also, running times being, you know, reliable, services going where people need them. I mean, the government has opened up the kind of Borders rail link and looking to promote these. But fares and how it's regulated and the kind of franchising system, and it's a bit of a complex Gordian knot that I wouldn't profess to be able to kind of unpick here. But it's certainly something that government is looking at, and in the context of how fares operate and how they influence that. It's not something that we're not alive to. So any measures, I think, to try and get people out of things like cars are going to have to consider that kind of broader context on buses and trains, and how that operates. I mean, for buses, the recent Transport Act, well, recent, a couple of years old now, but I mean, that does offer some alternative ways of delivery around local authorities potentially running them. People probably aware that Edinburgh has got a publicly owned service in Lothian buses, which is due to a kind of historic legal loophole, but trying to offer that out more broadly and looking at how provision can be more attractive, and within that kind of deregulated market, which means there are private operators operating in it, and the kind of the barriers that poses for government about things like fares.
Great. No, thank you, Brendan. I'm going to come back to you shortly if we have time with another couple of questions that have come in. I want to go to Magdalena quickly, if that's okay. Magdalena, at the start of the webinar, you talked about kind of setting the context for the climate crisis, and that we all need to start doing something now. We're beyond the point of thinking about it. It's now about how we all play our part and how we act. And I wondered if you had any kind of general tips that organisations could take to kind of play a part in that collective responsibility. Is there any key things that you would highlight that can be done?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's absolutely crucial for organizations to take everyone on board. It's not just about the top management. Everybody needs to be on board in order to have the greatest impact that organization could possibly have in terms of reducing carbon emissions. But certainly, especially at the state of emergency, organizations really need to think about how they incorporate reducing carbon emissions and tackling climate change into their corporate responsibility strategy and corporate strategy in general. To include climate action as part of their ethos as an organization, and make sure that this is communicated to their stakeholders as well as customers and partners, so clearly to show commitment. So that's the first step, of course, considering that we are at the state of emergency. However, if you want to get everyone on board, you need to make sure that communicating all the impacts that climate change would have on your particular business or sector is very important, so the employees understand what the risks are for the organization, for their work, their activities, but also making them aware of what they can do. So focusing on the things that they can do, what they can influence within their remit. This is very important, and this comes hand in hand with providing capacity building. So how we increase the awareness of employees in terms of the climate crisis. So providing training around climate, carbon literacy, climate awareness. This will be a good opportunity to make sure that all employees are on the same page. They understand the basics, but certainly it's very important to communicate the core benefits associated with taking action on climate change. In order for people to really get on board and commit to any kind of change, it needs to make sense to them. It needs to make sense, and they need to understand that it's the right thing for them to do. So without this awareness, we can't get everyone on board. So hopefully these tips would help organizations.
No, that's great. Thank you. Look, we're coming close to the end of time here. I think, I'd reiterate what Madeleine said there and what all the other panelists have talked about. It is about workplaces looking and individuals looking at what is within their control, what can they impact, and how can they work within those parameters to play a part. And I think it's been some really useful conversations today. I think we've covered most of the questions that were in the panel there, and I'm conscious about time, so I'm going to hand back to Terry. Thank you again to each of the panelists for your time today. It's been a really useful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shona, and thank you to everyone on the panel. Really insightful chat. And yeah, if you would like to find out any more about any of the stuff that we've talked about today, please do go to Way to Work or do get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to offer any more support or any more advice. Yeah, we are coming to the end of today's session, but no Zoom webinar would be complete without a poll at the end. So we would really like to hear your thoughts. So over to you now, if you would, if we can present the poll to the audience, and we'll give you a few seconds to have a little look at this. So the two questions are: do you think your workplace is doing enough to support active and sustainable travel? And then a little bit of a question to find out how we can offer any more support. So based on your experience in your workplace, is there any areas do you think your workplace would benefit from more support? So I'll give you a few seconds to complete that. Okay, I think, are we still coming in?
Still coming in at the moment. I think we might need some like elevator, smooth jazz music or something in the background.
We are certainly missing that. Yeah, we'll have to up our poll game for next time.
Okay, I'm gonna end the poll now and share the results.
Okay, no, thank you for your feedback on that. So it's a bit of a tight one in terms of, do we think we're doing enough? No coming out on top. So we can certainly offer, there's advice, there's guidance out there. Please do, if you're not responsible for that in your workplace, please do contact whoever it may be. Any of the active Way to Work partners would be more than happy to chat through anything. If we can support that, please do get in touch. And just moving on to what we may talk about. So in the future, so facilities to encourage active and sustainable travel, quite high on the list, as is travel behaviour change approaches, and then pretty close between the rest with policies properly shaping. So that's great insight to us. Thank you very much for anyone who's completed that, and we'll look at that, maybe potentially putting on further sessions in the future. Close at them. Yeah, and then so just to bring today's session to a close, we're not doing too bad for time, and we survived any technical concerns that we had at the start. So thank you very much. We had a good number of people attend today, and really big thanks to Patrick Harvie, the new Minister for Active Travel, Magdalena, Keep Scotland Beautiful, Brendan coming along for Transport Scotland, Kath from Cycling Scotland, Sarah from Next, and Lisa from IKEA. Really do appreciate you all feeding into this. It's been a really good session. I've really enjoyed it. I hope everyone else has. Please do not forget to make your pledges. It'd be great to see them, and we'll showcase them all on Way to Work. And just very, very finally, if you would like to complete a quick survey, a very quick survey, it would be very much appreciated. You could use our code on the screen, or you can follow the link in the chat. I think it's been posted, but it'll also be forwarded to you via email after the session. But yeah, that just leaves one big thank you from me. Really appreciate you coming along this morning, and look forward to having further conversations down the line. Take care, everyone.